Boa noite. Exemplo e referência de televisão pública, principal fonte de informações e a mais confiável produtora de programas da Grã-Bretanha. A história da British Broadcasting Corporation se confunde com a história do rádio. E hoje, a BBC, como é mundialmente conhecida, desbrava as novas mídias para, através delas, vencer o desafio de atrair e reter a atenção da juventude inglesa. Mas qual é, afinal, a missão da TV pública nestes dias de imprevisíveis inovações tecnológicas? Quem tem a resposta é a nossa entrevistada de hoje do Roda Viva, Jayna Bennett, principal executiva de televisão da BBC. Jayna Bennett, 51 anos, é, segundo o jornal inglês The Guardian, a 21ª pessoa mais poderosa da mídia inglesa. O Roda Viva começa já já. Jayna Bennett é uma das mulheres mais poderosas da televisão inglesa. Ela cuida de um orçamento anual de 1 bilhão de libras. Dá uns 3 bilhões e 650 milhões de reais. Bom, com tamanha carteira, é compreensível que ela tenha também muito trabalho. Inclusive, o de zelar pela criatividade e inovação de todos os canais de televisão do enorme conglomerado em que se transformou a BBC. E como a gente sabe, televisão que se preze hoje em dia não existe sem a internet e todos os seus filhotes. Para entrevistar a diretora-geral da BBC, Jayna Bennett, estão aqui conosco Nelson Roineff, presidente do Instituto de Estudos de Televisão, IETV, Patrícia Kogut, colunista e crítica do jornal O Globo, Lúcia Araújo, diretora do canal Futura, e Eugênio Butti, professor da Escola de Comunicações e Artes da Universidade de São Paulo e colaborador do jornal Estado de São Paulo também. A Carmen Amorim, nossa repórter aqui da TV Cultura, vai fazer durante a entrevista as perguntas que foram mandadas pelos telespectadores através do nosso site tvcultura.com.br/rodaviva. Você pode se informar no nosso site sobre os próximos programas e mandar por e-mail perguntas, críticas e sugestões. E está aqui com a gente também, claro, Paulo Caruso, nosso querido cartunista e desenhista. Presentes também hoje 3 usuários do comunicador Twitter, que permite a troca de pequenas mensagens via celular e e-mail. Eles vão pôr na internet as impressões deles sobre a entrevista de hoje. Para ver o que eles estão escrevendo, basta acessar os endereços que aparecem na tela. O Roda Viva também está no Twitter. Para nos seguir, é só clicar follow no endereço twitter.com/rodaviva. Boa noite, senhora Jayna Bennett. Obrigada pela presença. Outros países, como Alemanha e Canadá, por exemplo, dedicam enormes orçamentos também para suas TVs públicas, mas não se tem notícia de nenhuma outra nação tão desenvolvida quanto a Grã-Bretanha em que a televisão pública tenha se transformado nesse gigantesco conglomerado que é a BBC. A que a senhora atribui isso nesses tempos de globalização, a BBC tão presente, tão lembrada no mundo inteiro? Por que essa diferença da BBC em relação a outros países que também investem tanto no assunto?
I think we have always had a very strong news history, and I think our news presence has grown because of the World Wide Web. We went into the internet on news in the 1990s, ahead of many broadcasting organizations, and I think that has supported us both with World Service's reputation and more news on the web. So that's one thing. And the other is we've always worked with many international partners on a lot of our big programs, especially, let's say, science and natural history. So we've worked in an international way, I think, for many decades, and that means our name is known by many different countries. in a way perhaps that other countries haven't embraced so many partnerships. And we do it for really good reasons. One is we want to report the world and show the world. The other is we want to work in partnership because it also helps finance some very big projects in really good ways. But that means the programs are also seen by international audiences.
Patrícia.
A senhora falou em news in the web, né? Noticiário na internet. De que maneira que a internet e as novas mídias estão redefinindo a relação da BBC com seu telespectador nesse momento?
We now see television and the web cooperating and helping each other to reach as many audiences, different viewers that we can possibly reach, because the web at the moment adds to the experience, especially for younger people. A bit like this program invites people into the program in using new media and technology. We also now show our television programs on the web as well. So instead of having television that lasts for the time it's broadcast and then it's gone, we now have the ability to show most of our programs for the next 7 days on the web. And that adds to our ratings, but it also adds to the experience. You don't need to miss television. You can always catch up.
Posso falar? Jaina, uns 5 anos atrás, mais ou menos, nos Estados Unidos, foi lançado um livro de Robert Putnam, chamado Bowling Alone. E foi um livro que teve um grande impacto sobre a PBS, porque nesse livro ele mostrava como várias instituições americanas perderam os laços com a sociedade e com a construção de projeto de cidadania. E colocava, inclusive, uma falência da TV pública na capacidade de construir esses laços com a sociedade, né? Recentemente, no congresso em que você também estava, em Banff, no Canadá, um profissional da própria BBC, apresentando um projeto chamado Por que Democracia?, que foi um projeto que juntou 45 TVs no mundo todo para discutir a democracia. Novamente, ele falou que aquele projeto era uma forma da TV pública demonstrar a sua relevância. Então eu te pergunto, quer dizer, você acha que hoje o conceito da TV pública é um conceito em busca de relevância?
I think every country has its own situation, but I think the role of public television is stronger today than ever, and is needed because we want to be able to embrace all audiences with, let's say, important subjects to help understand the world around us. More important than ever to understand what's happening in the world of, let's say, finance at the moment, or science, always, our history. So I think the relevance of the concept of public service broadcasting is great. And when you look at something like the web, where in a way it's free, a model of the web being free is a very strong model. So for public service broadcasting to be in television, radio and the web makes a lot of sense, because we are free at the point of delivery, free to audiences, and that goes naturally with the web. But I think that international outlook is also important, that public service broadcasters can link together to do seasons like Why Democracy, because it's an interesting subject for every country, and being able to get by linking together, you can get more of a scale, bigger impact, and get attention, which of course media is busier than ever. We're all in a much more competitive environment. So getting attention, getting impact, and getting people to understand this is exciting and there's a new type of idea before them. By linking together, you can make more impact. And so I'd like to see more of those sort of interesting initiatives, which I think Why Democracy showed we can do it.
Diana, trava-se nesse momento no Brasil, como você sabe, um grande debate em torno da televisão pública no Brasil. Desde o ano passado, o governo brasileiro criou uma grande rede de televisão pública, cujos resultados até esse momento são muito controversos, né? O modelo da BBC, evidentemente, é sempre citado, e nós sabemos que ele é inexequível por pelo menos duas razões. Uma delas, o modelo do financing, que é impossível, mas a outra, que eu considero muito mais relevante, as enormes diferenças culturais que existem, não apenas entre os dois países, mas da maneira de se encarar televisão entre o Reino Unido e o Brasil. A pergunta objetiva é a seguinte: de que maneira você acredita que uma rede de televisão pública pode ser montada em países, em locais que tenham uma cultura tão diferente da cultura britânica sobre o setor?
I think that public television, the idea that there's a social benefit to having programming which is there regardless of, in a way, commercial pressure, is, of course, we have a unique privilege in Britain by having that very early, 80 years ago, being established so long ago that it's the commercial market has grown around the BBC, not the other way. So yes, we have unique historical advantages. However, in this time of, for example, wanting to support an understanding of science, for example, if the politics, the political establishment believes that it's important, there are ways potentially of being able to get public support for, let's say, education, just like we have public support to pay taxes for education or for medicine. The argument that there could be public support for television that provides this valuable thing to the audience. And there are countries who are considering, can you get a television license type structure like the BBC has, which is that everybody who watches television can pay something for it. And I don't know how much of a political argument there is in Brazil about the value of public service television and then the cost of it, because no question, it has to be paid for. And to have original, independent content, independent of government, but also independent of the toughest commercial pressures, is quite an important part of the answer. And without looking at the funding model, it's very hard to look at the good things you want to do with it. So I think it's important to have a public debate about public service broadcasting, because it's in the end a social choice. It's not just about us or not just about a broadcaster. It's about what would be beneficial and valuable to viewers and to society. So I believe in a universal funding model is I think, the best one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eugênio.
Jaina, essa sua explicação para nós no Brasil é muito preciosa, porque ela mostra a relevância, de um lado, de a democracia, o Estado, assegurarem um modelo de financiamento para a TV pública, mas, ao mesmo tempo, mostra a importância da distância entre governo e a gestão das emissoras públicas. Eu queria fazer uma pergunta com relação ou seja, o governo não deve dirigir os trabalhos editoriais, dirigir a administração das emissoras públicas. Mas eu queria fazer uma pergunta com relação ao financiamento. A senhora gerencia, administra um orçamento de 1 bilhão de libras. E a origem desse dinheiro vem dos telespectadores? Ou há alguma participação de publicidade, de recursos de publicidade no financiamento da produção da BBC?
The big proportion of our funding comes from the public, and it's a bit like paying a license to drive a car. Everybody who has a television set where they watch a BBC signal, and that's most of the population, they buy a television license. This is about 90 to 93% of all of the BBC's income. But we also work commercially through our commercial arm, BBC Worldwide, to sell DVDs, to have international co-production, to invest in magazines, for example, or television channels internationally. So we work with partners there as well. That is an important extra income stream, which then allows us to make our budgets go further. So although there is a lot of money from the license fee, we also need to be commercial, particularly internationally. That helps the public in Britain to get even more value for money, because we also have to invest in things like technology. It's not just the program content. So, for example, the web, to make that video, make the web, turn it from a text-based medium to pictures, costs quite a lot of it. There's new investment required. Or, for example, I mentioned how people can now watch in Britain, they can watch programs for the next 7 days on the web. Again, that's an important investment into the future. So our license fee also goes into future innovation. So commercial is important, but the most important part is the license fee, and we don't take any advertising. Take no advertising in Britain. Yeah. And we don't take, for example, programs are not sponsored in Britain either. So this is quite it's popular to the extent that the commercial broadcasters would prefer us not to be competing for advertising. Two different funding models is a strength in Britain.
Certo, mas qual a razão, qual o fundamento que a senhora nos daria, qual a justificativa, o argumento principal para não se ter publicidade na televisão pública?
Well, I would never think I should give advice to any part of another country. We have a different situation.
Yes.
But I would say that, and also the BBC existed first in Britain. It's very different in terms of history. So here you're building public service broadcasting in the middle of a commercial environment as well. So I think the conditions are probably different. And I wouldn't want to say, I wouldn't want to write a prescription as to how you should do it. But I would say that public service broadcasting does need support, independence, and it needs investment for higher quality. The audience knows the difference between what type of original investment you're making. They can tell that it's it's interesting, original, fresh, and independent. Those are all important values.
Mas acho que o que o Eugênio também quis perguntar é se o fato da BBC não ter publicidade dá a ela mais independência de produção, é isso?
The independence in particular is from any political interest. But the second type of independence is that because we aren't competing for advertising for any program or any channel, it means that we can be trusted to not be trying to do a particular program because it hits a particular, let's say, demographic or type of audience that is appealing to advertisers. So it's indirect, really, and that we have public service broadcasting in Britain, which also takes advertising, and they're good public service broadcasters. It's just that we are separate from the marketplace, and that means that we aren't competing for those advertisers in the same way with the other commercial channels, which means there's actually an acceptance of the license fee as a funding mechanism for the BBC, and that's very important. So we're not competing in the same way. Our kind of competition is around competition for quality and ideas.
Ok. Nós vamos fazer um intervalo e voltamos num instante com o Roda Viva, que é acompanhado por 3 tuiteiros que estão pondo na internet comentários sobre o nosso programa. Eles são Lúcia Freitas, jornalista, Aloísio Milani, jornalista também, e Bárbara Dieu, que é professora. A gente volta já já. A gente está de volta com o Roda Viva, que hoje entrevista Jaina Bennett, que é a principal executiva da televisão pública britânica BBC. Senhora Jaina, uma curiosidade minha é como a BBC, não sei se a palavra se rendeu, mas como a BBC passou a conviver e convive até hoje tão aparentemente com tanto sucesso com os reality shows, os polêmicos e controversos reality shows.
We have embraced some types of reality shows, and other ones we wouldn't think were right for the BBC. I think the idea that that people can be part of television in new ways is very refreshing, and we have done like a recent idea which was very appealing to young people, 16 to 34-year-olds, who tend to not always watch everything the BBC does. But this was taking a bunch of people who were fascinated by fashion and bought lots of clothes on the British High Street. We took them to the shops where they were actually made in India, and we took them to good factories and less good factories and to sweatshops, and they had to live with the workers and their families for a number of weeks. Now that is a reality show, but what it did for them to understand globalization, to understand the price of fashion, to understand something about the culture of the people who live in another part of the world where they'd never been there before. That was a very educational program, but the way it was done brought in a big audience and lots of conversation, and it was quite life-changing for them as well. And we weren't telling people what to think or how to come out of the experience, but that's for me, that is a type of reality television, but it's not the same as, let's say, looking at everybody shouting at each other, or just about whether they go off and do, to become boyfriend and girlfriend. It was actually about our purpose was about something more interesting, I think. So there's what I'd say reality programs which we wouldn't necessarily do, and other ones which are really interesting. And I think the term has become maybe a bad term, but actually there are all sorts of different types of television. It all depends on what you want to explore, what you want to investigate. But above all, it does need to be entertaining and interesting, not a lecture. So we use all sorts of techniques to keep the audience interested and to break open new ideas and new ground.
A gente tem várias perguntas de telespectadores, Carmen.
Tem sim, tem aqui do Lucas Santos, de Porto Alegre, Rio Grande do Sul. Ele pergunta o seguinte: já existe algum processo de compartilhamento de tecnologias entre as TVs públicas do mundo?
I think the innovation and technology are shared partly because there is a community who have a similar interest in new media, for example, and high standards of camera work. The world is gradually going on into high definition television, for example, and there's a kind of community that does share all of those things. But we also share in Britain, and we're wanting to do more of this technology with our commercial partners, because we all have an interest in times of really tough pressures on our budgets to find out ways of making things more efficiently and more cheaply. And that means we are trying to look at ways of jumping forward in innovation of new technology by saying, here we're sharing our research and development more. But there's not a completely formal international network, but we have things like the European Broadcasting Union and different other types of ways of sharing standards. And some of it's very important. For example, the web, where if we could think of new ways of innovating faster, that's good for all viewers around the world as well. So I'm sure there's more we could do.
Ok. Eugênio.
Nelson?
Quem quer falar?
Vai, depois eu pergunto.
Eu queria te perguntar o seguinte: há algum caso que a senhora se lembre, do qual alguém do governo, um ministro, tenha encomendado algum tipo de programa para a BBC, tenha pedido, faça um programa sobre esse assunto ou sobre aquele assunto? E também, quais os mecanismos pelos quais a gestão, a administração da BBC é realmente independente dos interesses do governo? De que modo institucional, como a organização da grande corporação da BBC assegura que não haja interferência do governo sobre a programação da BBC?
The structure of the BBC has a management structure. I'm part of the executive board, for example, and we run different parts of output: radio, television, the web, etc. But above us is an organization called the Trust, the BBC Trust, which are both our regulators, but also, in a way, supervisors and defenders of the public interest. So they are also a sort of a shield against interference or political pressure, and would also be able to be the people where we would refer to something very controversial after it's broadcast. And so there's a tradition which is very well understood in Britain, which is that they supervise us after we've broadcast. So if there is something which is a big controversy, and we have had those in times of war, for example, historically, BBC might get a lot of criticism from different sides. Very hard to broadcast impartially during war. Definitely in our history you could see that. The trust is there to keep us to be able to reflect after broadcast on whether we have done well, made a mistake, or need a change. But they are there also to defend the BBC and defend the public interest, not the interest of any political or government of the day. But that's also well understood within Britain, within the establishment, which is why our funding structure comes from the public, although it's negotiated every 7 to 10 years with the government. They also know that they would they cannot have direct influence. But there are interesting situations. For example, nutrition. Many countries have problems with, let's say, obesity, and we know that it's partly educating people how to eat is a good thing. However, we'd want to entertain, as I mentioned earlier. Finding ways of involving the audience, not lecturing them, would be important. We would know that at any one time, this might be the Department of Health's interesting agenda too. What we would do, though, is we might be aware of that, but we also might be aware of what doctors are saying, or what health professionals are saying, or what communities are saying, and we would just keep we'd be aware of that in the background, but we'd still go ahead and do the programs we think are important to do, and wouldn't take direct instructions, even over something like that.
Quem escolhe as pessoas que formam esse comitê?
There is a very good question. Who governs the governors? Kind of question. The trust is appointed by a committee which itself is independent of government. Although that committee can be selected through government, it's selected as a bipartisan, non-political kind of committee. So the names are put forward. They would find the names and do the search for the members of the trust. And it would be, I'd say, the selection process is about their skills, not about their politics. Mm-hmm. And it's about whether let's say somebody understands finance or new media technologies. So they're there in terms of their skills, in terms of understanding the public interest and the future of media, for example, not what affiliation they might have. And in fact, that would not be considered at all an appropriate question.
Gina, justamente se referindo à questão das tecnologias, das novas mídias, eu queria deslocar um pouco a discussão para um tema que eu considero completamente crucial na televisão nesse momento. Desde que a BBC inaugurou as suas transmissões regulares em 1936, a televisão aberta tem sido um veículo massivo. Isso está deixando de acontecer. Recentemente, em junho desse ano, no Congresso de Banff, você se referiu à questão da televisão americana ter perdido esse ano 6 milhões de espectadores. A televisão americana não está sozinha nisso. A televisão no Reino Unido, segundo uma pesquisa do The Guardian, nos últimos 10 anos perdeu, não tenho certeza do número, mas acredito que é alguma coisa em torno de 27% dos espectadores entre 17 e 24 anos. No Brasil, acontece a mesma coisa. A segunda colocada entre as emissoras abertas no Brasil detém hoje 5,5% de audiência. O público, então, está migrando para novas mídias, o público jovem está migrando para MP3, para os games. Os games hoje são muito mais relevantes do que a televisão para esse público. A pergunta que eu lhe faço é isso: o que a BBC, como um todo está fazendo no sentido de recuperar essa audiência ou de se adaptar à forma como os jovens percebem a televisão hoje?
Yes, we think about this, this question of where audiences are going and how they're behaving a lot. The one reason the web's very important is that we do embrace it as another form of television viewing as well, especially now that the web can carry video and can carry not just short form but whole programs. So we've actually decided to take television to where the audience may be, as not just sit there on television. So putting television into the web is one very important part of our strategy to kind of rediscover the audiences who may be elsewhere. The other thing is things like not just the web, but combining the web to television so that we can let audiences find their way to television as well as find their way to the web is very, very important. And we've found that television viewing hours are not falling particularly now. But amongst older people, there are probably longer hours, but at younger, they're doing many more things. What we haven't really been able to look at is how people are spending their time to project how they'll spend their time in the future, 5-10 years out. Will television times continue to be only one thing young people do, or a minority? And I don't think we know yet, but we have to focus on young people and what their interests are, which is why I mentioned the kind of programs where you think comedy, for example, very important, entertainment, drama, as well as the way we make programs, so that we're appealing to young people. We do find that they want good ideas, though. They don't find television, they love television, but I think we have to make more television they love without becoming sensationalist or doing things which are the simplest, only the most predictable things, but to keep surprising them, but also find ways of being on the web. Because if we don't, and mobiles, for example, we are looking at mobile phones. So any media or any medium we feel is important to us to get the greater, combine everything together. And I think things like gaming, we won't probably invest in the kind of gaming to the level the gaming industry is, but having some areas where young people can play on the web, even if it's serious content. Some elements of gaming is quite an important way to think about how TV might change in the future as well. More action-packed drama is borrowing, I think, from the history. The rules of gaming are now affecting drama in quite a good and interesting way. But also on the web, more interactivity, very, very important, because people don't want to always be in just a sit back and watch mode. So we're working very hard at this because I think there is a decline in audiences, but we've sort of pretty much slowed it down, including by having young people's channels, children's channels, 16 to 34-year-old channels, which are for those audience groups. And those channels are all still growing.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Lúcia.
Jaina, não sei se você concorda que para nós que fazemos televisão hoje, quer dizer, além do desafio de encontrar o telespectador nas diferentes plataformas, eu acho que também existe o desafio da gente fazer parte do diálogo que está acontecendo entre os jovens nessas plataformas. E nesse sentido eu queria saber se vocês na BBC têm alguma estratégia ou várias estratégias para incorporar esse jovem que está conversando na internet aos programas de TV. Quer dizer, não só entregar o conteúdo, mas fazer com que eles também tenham parte no diálogo, né, na produção de conteúdo, porque hoje os jovens estão produzindo conteúdo. Quer dizer, de que maneira a voz do jovem está sendo incorporada nos programas e nas estratégias que vocês têm para atingir esse público?
We are trying to, it's kind of an adventure this, in that, I mean, like this program is very interesting in how you embrace the audience in different ways. And I think radio is also very good for this too, a dialogue, but using email, using user-generated content as parts of programs. And for example, having a program which is we've just done a big program about the Amazon. I think the last episode was maybe last night in Britain, and yes, the adventurer made it to the Atlantic. So we went down the entire course of the Amazon. And but during the making of the program, we were on the web the whole time, months before it was ever broadcast. And that allowed audiences to participate in blogs and diaries which were posted on the whole adventure. And that, for example, helped create audience interest way in advance of the television show, but also during live television. Our breakfast television programs, for example, viewers can both phone in and email in. And I think that's important for lots of different age groups, not just young people, or talk shows having the ability to have the audience suggest what they want to have in it. I think that's being much more open is really important. But I would say that some programs, people just want to watch. They don't want to interact with everything. So drama, for example, although making dramas very exciting is important, I'm not convinced that audiences want to stop it and interact all the time. They just want a really good story. So I think being careful about what form the TV show is important. On the other hand, something like entertainment as opposed to drama, I think people really want to vote. They want to be able to interact. They want to help choose winners. They want to help choose the contestants. That is really changing the shape of entertainment programs, and they're almost they're highly interactive. Whether that's people sitting in a studio or voting with text or phones, they want involvement. So thinking carefully about which things where you open the doors to the audience is important. But the other thing I'd say is, for something like comedy, we know the web, for example, is a great place for laughs, for jokes, and for some really fantastic humor, and it's generated by the community on the web. And so, for example, in the new year, we are opening up a new website for comedy, which is going to really embrace other people's forms of humor, not just television professionals, writers, and performers, but also then the performers of the future, and to see whether we can then also work with them to move from being just user-generated comedy to professional comedy. And that's just another route of saying we embrace new talent. So I think comedy is a really important one, where the web there's just so much humor there, which we see only a little bit of on television. I think we could do more.
Yes.
Nós vamos fazer um intervalo e lembramos que memória do Roda Viva está disponível em nosso site, a nossa memória. O nosso site é tvcultura.com.br/Roda Viva. Ali você pode pesquisar o conteúdo do nosso arquivo e também mandar e-mails com críticas e sugestões. A gente volta já já. Nós estamos entrevistando hoje no Roda Viva a principal executiva de televisão do conglomerado inglês BBC, a senhora Jana Bennett. Senhora Jana, a gente já falou sobre publicidade e a gente sabe também que a senhora é uma entusiasta da produção independente, de contratar produtores independentes e pôr seus programas no ar. Mas a senhora já teve um problema com eles, com merchandising dentro dos programas independentes. Como a senhora resolveu isso? Ou isso ainda não está resolvido? O preço é a eterna e permanente vigilância? Como acontece isso na produção independente da TV pública?
We have very strong rules about not having sponsorship either of programs or product placement. So the debate in Britain has been about whether there's ever been a time of too much prominence being given to objects in, let's say, drama or cookery shows, for example. The issue is more about whether we rotate products, because we also want programs to look authentic, and therefore to use real things, real cars, but we make sure that there's no one type of product being preferred, and that make sure it looks authentic, because they're part of the real world, but at the same time not have any deals being done which are preferring one company over another. So there was a debate about whether there was enough vigilance, and so I think that there isn't a problem now, but we've restated what the guidelines are like. And it wasn't just about independent producers, it was just about whether or not, there's a big debate in Britain about whether to take product placement officially in the commercial broadcasters. That means the BBC has to take even more care so that people don't misunderstand what we're saying is we want realism, but to make sure the audience trusts us that we aren't doing anything on a commercial basis.
Ok. Patrícia.
A senhora falou que o público não quer só interagir. Há programas que o público quer apenas assistir. Essa é uma tendência em todas as faixas etárias, inclusive entre o público jovem, que é o grande desafio para todas as televisões do mundo, conquistar esse público jovem? Esse público jovem também quer apenas assistir em alguns momentos?
I think we know from research we've done as well that young people also like to relax. They want to sort of chill out, and they want to be able to just enjoy something and then talk about it afterwards with their friends, for example, or maybe they're talking during a program on their phones or whatever. But I think just looking, I have 2 teenage children, and I watch them. I think they're quite normal. I watch them watching television and gaming and using messaging and all those different things. And they do firstly like good television. They're very good at understanding what quality is from their point of view. And when they watch it, they really focus on it. So their big thing is they're perhaps harder to get in front of the television itself than, let's say, an older person who's really has more of a habit. But when they watch it, they're intensely. They don't want to be interrupted. They don't want to just stop and start and interact. They just want good television. So I think we just have to understand behavior. There are very different types of behavior and different times of day and different tastes. But when they get intensely involved in something, they want to watch everything of that series. They often want to buy the DVD as well and watch it again or see it again as a repeat. So they've very strong television tastes, I think. I'm very respectful of it because they don't always watch the BBC. They'll watch our competitors and they'll tell me, why can't we have that on? And so they're very demanding, and they're very media literate as well. So I just think it depends on the type of program, whether they want to be involved or really view. But the experience itself is very important to them.
Carmen.
Jaina, tenho 2 perguntas aqui que elas se interagem também. O Ricardo Sampaio Zanota, de São Paulo, ele pergunta como a BBC vem trabalhando e desenvolvendo conteúdos para a TV digital. E Paula Soares, do Rio de Janeiro, ela pergunta se a interatividade com o telespectador tem sido uma das maneiras mais eficientes de trazer de volta o público jovem que abandonou um pouco a televisão.
Well, the story of digital television in Britain probably started about 8 years ago, or probably 10 years ago, when we started creating some channels in digital as opposed to analog. But now, all channels are in digital as well, but not all homes are. So we broadcast in digital everything. So I no longer have a difference in my mind between a digital channel and an analog channel, because in cable and satellite and digital terrestrial, all the channels are provided, all the BBC channels, and we're getting towards near to 90% of all homes are now digital. So there's only 10% of homes that can't get most channels, and that gap is going to close because by 2012, all of Britain would have been switched to digital, and the analog signal gets switched off. So the important part of our story, I think, of the last 10 years has been to invest in reasonably high budgets. By high, I mean they've been smaller than the traditional channels, but we've forced it. We've said this quality must be the same. So we may have tighter budgets, but the quality, the audience must see no difference between what they see on digital and on the old traditional analog channels, because we think being in digital has bigger advantages overall in the long term, because there's more interactivity, there's better signal, and so on. So we've really invested in digital to make it quality, give people confidence there's quality there. That's also why all of our channels have drama, entertainment, comedy, and news, and factual in the mix. None of them are just about one type of programming. And I think that means that the overall population now has confidence that digital doesn't mean something scary or different, because we've pushed the investment, we really forced the pace to make sure that digital was attractive and made sure that people who only had traditional TV sets could also see some of the programs. We've moved our programs back and forth so they see, if I had digital, I could see that program. So we've also used it as a promotional thing over the last 5 years to say, well, if I got that new channel, I'd see all those new comedies. I'm seeing a little bit of them now. But if I bought the digital box for terrestrial or for cable or for satellite, I could then get these new types of programs. So we haven't made it a secret what's over there across the digital divide. And now Britain as a whole will be switching off the analog signal, and it's not very long away, so, and we're almost there now. So the story has been one of trying to make sure there's quality, even though we've really had to make sure our budgets are used well.
Lúcio.
Jayna, a BBC é muito orgulhosa do seu valor público, né? Eu queria saber como que vocês avaliam, medem o valor público. Quer dizer, quais são as réguas, né, para você avaliar, para você mensurar esse valor? Quer dizer, eu imagino que seja além da audiência, que tipo de pesquisa? Vocês fazem pesquisa de impacto social? Que tipo de pesquisa vocês fazem exatamente para poder afirmar a BBC tem todo esse valor público?
We have a set of measures, and because we don't make a profit, we're not for profit, the one measure we don't have is the bottom line. And in some ways, it's a bit more difficult because we can't say, is it profitable or is it not profitable? What we do see is, do we give something of value to everybody who's paid for us? So that value is measured by, are we reaching audiences? So the reach of the BBC, we think that's more important than share of audience. That we want to reach everybody because everybody's paid for us. And that is always a piece of work. We always have to think of who isn't seeing us as being for them as much as other audiences. And that's great because it means that's why we embrace entertainment on a Saturday night. It's to involve everybody, to be have a family viewing experience, as well as, let's say, something very specialist at another time of day or another channel. So reach is one. Quality, how do people appreciate the programs? And we measure every program through a big audience panel, which they say, here's our appreciation score. And we know different channels get different programs have different measures, but we also know when the measure is good and when it's not so good. And that means we understand what they think. The other one is value off screen, as you said, Lucia, where you have people gone and made more of the experience. So, for example, we have a big project called Breathing Spaces, which is about green places both in cities and in the countryside. We've helped people through the web and through television programs know what they can go and do if they were to go out and go out to the countryside or to parks. And we measure people's take-up of both on the web, but also of these events that we stage. And so we do measure sort of project by project. We will measure our reading and writing campaign. Have people picked up our educational packs? Because we know illiteracy is a problem. And some people who can be adults and know that they have not had the chance during formal education. And we'll have a campaign which allows people to drop their fear of illiteracy and do reading and writing, and we'll measure that impact as well. So those are sort of what I'd call off-air measures. And the fourth measure, which is very new, is, and it's quite hard to do the maths, is the web plus radio plus television for every household who pays the license fee. Because the license fee is not paid by each individual, it's paid by the home with the TV set. So we're trying to say, what's the household value of the BBC? And it might be the young person likes radio and the older person likes television. We're trying to get a picture of the value they see. That's complicated, and we think it's a useful measure to see what do they think about the way they've paid for us. And it might be one thing, which is the most valuable thing, but we need to understand that more.
Jayna, eu queria me referir instante à questão do conteúdo, da qualidade do conteúdo, né? Existe na Grã-Bretanha, de um modo geral, uma tradição de reflexão sobre televisão maior do que existe em outros lugares. Quer dizer, isso se percebe pela obra das pessoas que refletem sobre televisão e se percebe também pela produção televisiva, não apenas da BBC, de outros produtores como a Granada e muitos outros. A televisão é vista em muitos lugares como um meio efêmero, um veículo de segunda classe, e me parece que na Grã-Bretanha isso jamais aconteceu. Desde o início da BBC, a televisão era vista de uma forma nobre, tão nobre como continua sendo visto agora. Nós, no Instituto de Estudos de Televisão, realizamos anualmente um festival de televisão e exibimos muitos produtos da BBC e outros produtores ingleses. No ano passado, ou retrasado, eu estava assistindo a um produto em particular, o Flash Mob, The Opera, e aquilo me impressionou muito. Quando o programa terminou, eu fiquei pensando comigo mesmo, isso não poderia ser feito em qualquer outro lugar do mundo. Eu não imagino um programa como esse sendo feito mesmo na Europa ou nos Estados Unidos, em qualquer outro lugar do mundo. Eu queria saber, na sua visão, a que se deve essa importância tão grande, esse desenvolvimento tão grande do conteúdo televisivo e da qualidade televisiva que se dá na Grã-Bretanha e muito especialmente na BBC.
I think that in Britain there is a high level overall of investment in television through the public service broadcasting system. In other words, not just the BBC, but the separate funding models for our commercial competitors who are also public service broadcasters. So the overall effect is that there's a high level of investment per head in television and and broadcast media in Britain historically. And I think it's also, because it's quite a small country, there is a sort of shared television culture. And you're right, people debate television all the time, and it's not seen as just like entertainment or just for profit. It's seen as a cultural, it's a great thing to debate. And so all the newspapers debate it, and they debate everything from our soaps to our serious history or the news, or they'll just debate everything. And the British press is very, very lively, sometimes very aggressive, sometimes very interested, and that's in a way a compliment. So we take it seriously, but we also don't see a big difference or big split between being entertaining and having quality in entertainment or drama and being serious. They see them going hand in hand to deliver to the biggest possible audience. And there was a great expression from a previous Director General at the BBC who said, we make the good popular and the popular good. And I think it's a great expression, because even the most popular program isn't either, it doesn't have to be, let's say, dumbed down as an expression. You know, is it just dumb? No, it can be very smart, very well made, embrace people's talents. On the other hand, you can be very serious about something, but do it in an entertaining way, or find a passionate presenter to make the most difficult subject understandable. So I think that's there is a shared culture there, and. But I would also say there's high quality wins in many parts of the world. If you think of American drama, which travels around the world, American drama is very, very highly admired. It is about quality in a very, very competitive market, and they create, innovation is what wins in the end, doing things a bit differently and thinking of what's new. So I think there's more of a shared international culture than ever, because the strongest programs travel very fast. So, for example, I think in Brazil you do Dancing with the Stars.
Yes.
I mean, that was a BBC creation, Strictly Come Dancing, we call it. It's work, and everywhere it is, it's a very popular show, and that's because the idea of the show is very strong. So I think it's not unique to Britain that TV is taken seriously. I think Brazil seems to me a very serious TV culture. I mean, TV is more important here than movies, possibly, and certainly TV is more important in Britain than the actual movies. But I think in America now, television's is increasingly seen where good acting, good production values are too, not just Hollywood. So I think it is changing on the world, and I celebrate it, because I think I like TV a lot, obviously, especially since I work in it. But also I think it's a great mass medium, and everybody can share in quality in different ways. But I'm very interested in you mentioning Flash Mob, because that was one of those sort of crazy ideas. When I first heard about it, was my head of our young channel happened to talk to the the head of classical music, and the two you'd think might never meet. Because they would live in very different worlds in some ways. But he said, what about this flash mob, this phenomenon of texting all your friends, and you have a exponential increase, because everybody then texts their friends to get them to one place and don't tell them quite what's going to happen. And he said, could that ever be applied to classical music? I want to do an arts program in the Young Channel. And the head of classical music, who usually does classical concerts for the BBC, I mean, he films them. He does the Proms, which is the biggest music festival in the world, at the Royal Albert Hall in London. You would usually be doing those. And so he just sort of scratched his head and thought, that's something in that. Let's do an opera in a railway station, but not tell anybody it's going to go. We just text everybody and see who turns up. And all these commuters and young people traveling on trains to get to London, a big city like Sao Paulo, lots of commuters every day, just as they're thinking they're getting home from work, there's this opera in the railway station, and it was high quality and very surprising, and it was a hit show. It was I'm really pleased you saw it, but that sort of thing has got to be about just giving people space and time for creativity, which isn't prescribed, isn't dictated ahead of time as to what it shouldn't be or shouldn't be. And that was a big surprise to everybody, including me, but I loved it.
Nós vamos fazer um intervalo e a gente quer lembrar que o programa foi gravado, por isso as perguntas que estão sendo feitas aqui dos telespectadores chegaram antes e pela internet no nosso site tvcultura.com.br/Roda Viva. Você também pode se informar lá sobre os próximos programas e mandar e-mails para a gente com perguntas, críticas e sugestões. A gente volta já já. Nós voltamos com o último bloco do Roda Viva desta noite, que entrevista Jayna Bennett, a principal executiva de televisão da BBC, rede inglesa, importante conglomerado inglês. Senhora Jayna, uma pergunta pessoal. O que a fez desistir da sua carreira de cantora profissional? A senhora chegou a flertar com essa vontade de ser cantora e hoje é uma executiva bem-sucedida, ganha o equivalente aqui no Brasil a quase 2 milhões de reais por ano. O que a fez desistir da carreira?
Well, I love singing, and but I thought you have to be really good to succeed. And I then, because I was at university, was thinking of what to do next. I was studying at the London School of Economics, which is in London, but right across the road from the BBC World Service. And I saw that a lot of people who had good languages were working there from my university. And so I started to go to the studios and heard their international programs. And I thought I would really like to go into an organization which was interested in exploring the world and reporting on the world. And although I still love music, and coming to Brazil is such a treat because you have such brilliant music, and I will always love it, I also love the idea of exploration and discovery and curiosity. And the BBC, in the end, programming is about finding new things all the time and communicating. So there was a choice, and I think I probably made the right one. And there are better singers in the world than me.
Eu vou perguntar algo menos pessoal, mas talvez que se refira à fé ou à espiritualidade das pessoas, porque a BBC produz bons documentários sobre várias religiões do mundo e, aliás, eu vi menções suas sobre isso, dizendo da importância da presença de estudiosos, de pessoas que conheçam o assunto e que possam fazer, o que é uma das missões da BBC, promover o conhecimento e universalizar o conhecimento. Mas no Brasil, a relação entre religião e televisão é um pouco diferente. Nós temos engajamento de emissoras com causas religiosas. Elas não fazem informação sobre religiões, mas proselitismo, pregação religiosa. Isso é muito comum em várias emissoras do Brasil. Várias transmitem missas dominicais, por exemplo. A senhora falou muito sobre a independência da televisão em relação ao governo, em relação ao mercado. E como a senhora enxerga essa questão e como a BBC lida com a independência em relação à propaganda religiosa, ao proselitismo religioso, a essa tendência de usar a TV como meio de cooptação de fiéis e de promoção de igrejas?
There are also religious channels in Britain. We have many, hundreds of channels, and there are maybe more faith-based channels, which might also be asking people to worship with them, and many people who are at home who may not be able to go out to a church or a mosque or to the faith of their choice might well think this is their main line back into their religion. But for the BBC's role is to respect religious faith, but also to report on it. We are also a journalistic organization which will do documentaries about the nature of religion as it maybe meets politics, or religion as it changes history, etc. So we will both do cultural programming and news and politics across a range of trying to understand the importance of religion. So I think respect is important, and understanding also is important in Britain, because there are a number of religious faiths, and there are also, it's also got a large number of people who don't officially practice any religion, so that must be respected as well. Mm-hmm. We also have some worship programs. We have a very well-established show called Songs of Praise, which is very popular. It's on a Sunday early evening, where a lot of people like the celebration of religion. So we aren't just journalistic or just reporting or doing, let's say, specialist knowledge programming about religion. We also have worship, and we also look at different religions having different points in the year, having sometimes a celebration. But I think there is a respect also for our separation. There's a separation of broadcasting, public service broadcasting, from organized religion as well as from organized politics. So yes, it's a good question, but it's not one that really arises. It's a kind of very well understood, that difference.
Great.
Ok. A senhora falou, a Lilian mencionou os realities que a BBC produz, a senhora falou de Dancing with the Stars. Tem todo esse movimento de ser popular, ser uma TV para as multidões, mas o que a BBC não produziria de jeito nenhum?
Well, one example would be there's a great program on our big competitor channel, ITV, called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Mm-hmm. And at a time when we were thinking of what should we do for our big Saturday night show, this one came up. And I thought it was perfect for them, because it was, and I know you're not meant to talk about your competition or praise them, but I will. It was good for them, because they did have quite a lot of celebrities around who worked on the channel, but it was a clever idea. It was a funny idea about celebrity. It wasn't just straightforward reality. But I thought it fitted their channel very well. Well, something like Dancing with the Stars, Strictly Come Dancing, fit the BBC well, because that was about very positive transformation, that even the people who are voted out are winners, really, because of what they've done. They have to work very hard at it. They have to really be very good to win. And they learn the dancing skills they learn are really quite amazing. So I think we have a slightly more, I'd say, aspirational approach to reality in terms of BBC reality or entertainment. It's also about more positive. I think slightly more positive outcomes is what we would tend to go for. That's not to say all reality on other channels is negative, but some of it can be either quite negative, sometimes very intrusive, but also sometimes without much soul in terms of what is it really trying to do. And I think that programs with a bit of a purpose in the end are more long-lasting. I think the audience really notices that there's something more to them than just spectacle.
Ok.
Eu tenho aqui uma pergunta do Vinícius Garcia, de Campinas, São Paulo. Ele diz: existem TVs estatais de qualidade aqui no Brasil, mas de baixa audiência. Como resolver esse problema? Interatividade e humor são fundamentais nesse caso?
I think humor is very appealing, and I think humor in all sorts of programs, a sense of, I mean, life is humorous, even sad things have humor in them, really. So I think that's important, not to always be totally approach even a serious subject as if it's only serious, because I think life is about a number of things. I think it helps in terms of that approach to also not think, even educational TV, if it's too much didactic, purely teaching, there are better ways of teaching, possibly. However, television is a very inspirational medium. It can really make you want to then take yourself further and learn more, which is why our factual programming, we take it very seriously, but often we'll have a very passionate and maybe a humorous or a very involved presenter to make sure we break any barriers down between the difficulty of a subject and the audience. So we think that's very important. I think quality is very important. Quality is in the eye of the viewer, but I think they want to know that it's going to be a good way of spending time, and that is about not wasting my time. Everybody's got very short time. Make sure the quality experience is there, and that in turn leads you to the funding model. So I think if there is a social agreement to have good quality television, trying to figure out a way of supporting the funding, and it's not an easy thing to do, but I think the money can help with the impact as well.
Gina, eu sei que nós estamos nos aproximando do final e eu não queria deixar de lhe fazer uma pergunta que eu considero essencial. Eu não vejo a possibilidade da televisão se desenvolver sem um olhar muito próximo ao mobile, à portabilidade. Eu queria lhe perguntar se o mobile já alterou o perfil da programação da BBC e, caso isso não tenha acontecido, na sua opinião, quando isso acontecerá?
I think each country has a different set of infrastructure questions about mobile. For example, South Korea is way ahead of where we are in terms of the ability to carry lots of data or visuals on mobile, and therefore for us there's the cost of mobile and its take-up is less than in some other countries. So we are concentrating firstly on the web. But I think your question's a very good one, because if particularly young people are going to start watching video screens which are portable, they may not be mobile phones, but they'll be portable gadgets, PDAs and MP3 players and things like that, that if that's a way they're going to access their media, we want good quality television to be on mobile. But we're looking at the cost of this, because the most important thing for us is to produce really good programs, because in the end, whatever the screen, if the programs aren't good, nobody will want to access it. So we concentrate firstly on our funding of high quality content, and then secondly on distribution. And at the moment, the broadband revolution is still, the take-up of broadband is far greater, and it's a very good way to go. I could see a third wave being mobile, but I think it's not as easy to be universally available and at a good cost of distribution, from my understanding of it. So we haven't made that our top priority, and we're looking at other countries' evolution carefully.
Senhora Gina, uma das poucas críticas que a gente lê sobre a BBC, que é fartamente elogiada pela imprensa inglesa, é em relação à programação para os pobres. Isso é segundo a The Economist, a senhora deve ter lido também. Um executivo mesmo da própria BBC diz que a verdade é que a BBC está fazendo uma programação para pessoas mais velhas, de mais de 50 anos, elitista, para a população branca, inclusive, e excessivamente voltado para a classe média. O que a BBC pensa em relação a isso?
Well, we know that about 93% of the population, the BBC reaches 93% of the British population, and that there is a high level of sort of endorsement of the program quality, And I would not want the viewers here to get the impression that there's a kind of an elite set of viewers. We have mass audiences on many nights, which embraces everybody. And indeed, things like our Young Channel particularly gets say younger audiences very well. It's still growing, and so on. So we do try to cultivate every audience. I think though we work hard, knowing that the job is never done. We know that somehow as we go further out of London to the north of England and to Scotland, for example, where there's also quite a strong pull of Scotland thinking that Scotland is a bit different from England. There's a pull about wanting their own programs as well. We're investing more in reaching those audiences, which isn't the same as saying it's about rich and poor, but it's about regionality. There's less approval of the BBC in the north and in Scotland than in other parts of the country. And so we're working on making sure we have more programs that represent people's lives in those parts of the country, and in those parts of all the nations of the UK, because we know that the BBC must connect everybody, but it isn't quite as depicted in that article. And we also know that there are real strengths that we have which we don't want to lose. We don't want to abandon audiences either. So we want to make sure we're reaching out to new audiences and doing better with some audiences who have less high approval. At the same time, our approval's never been higher than it is at the moment in terms of the last 5 years, let's say. So we don't want to lose the affection and loyalty of those audiences we do have, but we do want to reach out more to other audiences, and that's right, because everybody pays for us.
Nós temos 1 minuto para uma última pergunta. Quem precisa fazer? Carmen.
Qual o formato ideal para atingir o público jovem na televisão? É a pergunta, então, do Fernando Rebouças.
I think audiences, they love drama and they love comedy. Comedy is a very tricky type of programming genre, because it's hard to know from one person to another what's funny. So in the end, probably comedy drama is probably the best thing for young people, where it's aspirational, it shows transformation of your life, and shows you to yourself. You look at people a bit like you. They might be fiction, but I do think drama is very effective, and comedy drama even more so, because kids have quite hard lives, I think. There are a lot of things going on, and it's very challenging, and something which allows them to relax, escape, but see themselves, possibly in another guise, I think is very, very powerful television.
Senhora Jayna, muito obrigada pela sua presença hoje aqui no nosso programa, no Roda Viva. As perguntas que não foram encaminhadas a ela, dos nossos telespectadores, nós daremos a ela depois do programa. Obrigada também a vocês, telespectadores. Gente, muito obrigada pela ajuda, pela colaboração. Obrigada aos tuiteiros. Na semana que vem tem mais um Roda Viva, na segunda-feira. Até lá.